It is a green day in the markets. We have crypto pumping, TradFi having a little bit of a run based off of some better than expected PPI data. We'll be diving into that, retail sales, the crypto market, and more today on Money Never Sleeps. Welcome back to Money Never Sleeps, everybody. Before we get going, do us a solid, hit that like button, subscribe to our channel. Nothing that Kevin or I say is financial advice. We are not financial advisors, so please do your own research before making any buys or sells. Kev, we are watching as the market is pumping. Some tokens out here in the crypto streets are hitting, 12-month highs. Solana, Avalanche, ETH is having a solid day. Link is back up. Bitcoin is at 37.6. On the TradFi side, we see the Dow is up 200 points. The dollar has taken a bit of a hit. The VIX is down to 14. This is all on the back of data that is saying that maybe we're getting that soft landing that the Fed promised. We'll jump into the data here in a minute, but I want to get your initial thoughts as we, hit hump day here in the markets and we move toward the holiday season.
Yeah, man. I think you got a little taste of how I feel about these markets before the show.
Don't just do that for me. Let everyone hear about it.
It is very, very frustrating sometimes in these markets to be witnessing irrationality, supersede a lot of data and a lot of things that have been building up over the course of months. And, at the end of the day, the market's going to do what the market's going to do. I anticipate some irrationality. I think it's the amount of, in some degrees, just stupidity, lying, and people just kind of gaslighting us from, mainstream media and stuff like that, right? You got Jim Cramer out here last night saying that the Fed has engineered the perfect soft landing, and then he's going crazy talking about how much he worships Jerome Powell. You got Kathy Wood over here on CNBC as well. It seems like everything's on CNBC. She's out here saying that Gary Gensler, I don't know what's his problem, what's his deal. I mean, he just want to prove this Bitcoin ETF. Like she was saying, she wasn't saying it as sassy as I was just right now, but she was saying it to the point where it was just like, how are you investing this much fucking money in this industry and you don't understand what's going on in it and why the price continues to go up and why he won't approve it? He's announced it for over 12 months why they won't approve a Bitcoin ETF. And Blackrock came out yesterday and said it's because of the stablecoins that we cannot see Bitcoin in a fully, I won't say decentralized, but a market that isn't as manipulated as it currently is, because the power rests in the hands of 4 exchanges mainly and 2 stable coins that are at war with each other, right? It's just absolutely insane. And I think it's just this my sanity is going because of how insane everyone else is reacting. So that's my take on the market. There's a lot of things I did tons of research on last night. I was up late last night just looking at charts, but we can get into that in a second. Let's talk about the data. That I'm too flustered right now.
All right, let's talk about the data. Let's bring you down a little bit. Let's just bring it
down, Scotty. Bring it down, Scotty.
Okay. Let's start with PPI. Came in down 0.5%, which was significantly lower than the up 0.1% expected and the previous month of 0.4% increase. So that's good. Like 80% of that is attributed to lower prices of gasoline, which isn't surprising. We've seen the price of oil come down, seeing gas, near me at like under $3 for the first time in a while. So that's a welcome surprise. So that's a positive there. Retail sales data was down 0.1% month over month, up 2.5% year over year. So we're starting to see people potentially spending a little bit less. Now, I also want to touch on a CPI. I missed yesterday. Appreciate you in the house taking care of business. But we saw the numbers come in yesterday for CPI, no change month over month versus an increase that was expected of 0.1% and 0.4% in previous months. Core was up 0.2%, which is less than the 0.3% expected. What got my attention, though, was we're once again seeing food and shelter, 2 of the biggest parts of everyone's budget, taking an increase. Food was up 0.3%. 4 of the 6 major food group indexes were also up. You see like meat and poultry and eggs, like important things for people to eat, were up, almost 1%. Like it's not slowing down. And then you look at shelter too,
That was up a
up
lot.
up 0.3% month over month, and still 6.7% increase year over year. It makes sense when you see that why we saw retail sales going down, right? Like maybe people are just saving and waiting for the holiday season, and we see the November and December data go up there as well. It wouldn't surprise me in the least bit. Like it's almost guaranteed that we see that happen with the holidays approaching. But man, people are still in a crunch here, dude. And I don't see it getting better anytime soon. The question becomes, how are we going to continue to see that impacting the markets? And I know that you're frustrated with it being somewhat irrational. At this point, I don't know. I feel like I've just been jaded around, and I've been around this enough years to where I'm just like, nothing surprises me anymore. Manipulation, greed, none of this shit is surprising to me in the least bit. And expecting the markets to act rationally is usually a fool's errand.
Oh, 100%. And to note on what you said about, consumer spending around the holiday season, I can guarantee you there's a lot of college kids out there asking Santa for student loan forgiveness. So I think they're going to be looking for that in their stocking this year, but probably not. Depends on, well, that's the one type of debt you just can't get out of, isn't it? So yeah, I mean, it's really insane. I think one thing that really drove CPI down, and it's just so comical. And again, we're going to get revisions on all this shit in about a month or so. But when you look at healthcare, you saw that where it was like down 34 points. And a lot of people are like, no, it's not, in terms of like how much healthcare is actually costing you, some of those premiums. Here's the thing. They changed the way that they calculated it. However, that still adds that negative push to the downside, helped drove CPI lower. That's the part that's just absolutely insane, and markets take that as a positive. But yeah, for me, when I looked at everything, it was shelter and food that were just absolutely ridiculous. Like that's the two things that we need. I mean, people aren't going to buy big ticket items, right? They're not going to buy a new washer and dryer. They're not going to buy a new TV. They're going to focus on stuff that's really important. They're going to buy their food, and they're going to make sure that they have a place to stay, right? Those are the two things that are most important, and they're just not coming down. So I think that's really insane to see how the markets reacted regardless. I think it's just a headline number and the core number. I mean, core came down 0.1, big fucking whoop, right? It's nothing to be writing home about. And I think even the PPI data that we got today just shows that things are slowing down, still slowing down on the consumer front. And, oil, I think, is the other thing too. It's demand is coming down. I don't think necessarily as many people are buying vehicles. So there's also probably less demand for oil as well. It is what it is. That's just a few things that I noticed about it. And I didn't get a chance to talk about it yesterday because I looked at the data after the show a little bit deeper, and I was like, man, this is a little fishy still.
It is, in fact, a little fishy. Anything on the TradFi side that is catching your attention? I'm seeing Coinbase having a monster day, up almost 8%. We're just getting more and more gaps that, everything's just overbought on that, on the time frames there. I'm looking at it on the daily. On the weekly, it's moved to overbought. And if you look at the monthly chart, it's also been overbought for a while. So who knows when that will change? It may just keep chugging along that way forever. But what is, let's start with the TradFi side, and then we can get into crypto. I'm seeing green across the board for treasuries. Like people are selling their treasuries, and they're wanting to move into risk assets right now. And maybe that is just not the right time. Maybe it's a little too soon, Junior.
Well, that's the federal government's biggest worry, right? They need to have those treasuries, make sure people aren't offloading those. I mean, that's how we're going to keep operating, other than, obviously taxes. But this is what's really interesting to me. So do you know who George Gammon is? He has a YouTube channel called Rebel Capitalist.
I do not.
Pretty smart guy. Again, smarter than I am. So I didn't necessarily see this, and he brought it up in a show yesterday. And I do want to talk about it because this does paint a picture very different from what we're seeing across TradFi right now. So obviously people are expecting we're in a bull market, right? Let me pull this up. We're going to look at the NASDAQ right now. And, we talked about this a long time ago. We had a show where it was the 7 stocks of the apocalypse. People call them the magnificent 7. I cannot pronounce magnificent, so I call them the 7 stocks of the apocalypse. But yeah, this is this is what the Nasdaq's pretty much done this year, right? We got in a lower high in this area. I mean, it could still go up to, you know, double top at 16,797. Could even go higher than that, right? I'm not discounting it. We can still see that the weekly has plenty of room to the upside. But I'd imagine with the move that we've seen this week that there should be, that gap should be closing and we should be overbought fairly soon. But you know, the interesting thing that he brought up was you can take a look at this. You can take a look at the S&P. You can take a look at the Dow. Everything's relatively has not moved year over year, right? From where we were in May 2023 to where we were in maybe a little bit more than a year, maybe like January, December of 2021. We're still within a small range, a small window where it hasn't moved too drastically. However, that's a different story if you look at the Russell 2000, the small caps, right? It hasn't bounced, right? And this is what's really interesting, and that's why we have to talk about the weighted moves, the weight of certain stocks within the S&P. Obviously, there's a few that are more heavily weighted as opposed to some of the other smaller caps, and then the Russell 2000 just doesn't account for all the big boys, right? So when we're looking at this and the state of where we are, we can see that we just got a death cross on the weekly for the Russell 2000, and we rallied right into it. Remember that we were seeing these death cross rallies. That's going to be important, right? So we're seeing this across the board. And if we look at it from the bull market high to where we currently are, and I'm not even going to go to the bottom, but we can check that as well if we want to, you know, to where we currently are, that's a 26% drop. And if we go all the way to the market bottom, that's a 33.44% drop. So you can argue that the stock market has crashed in some regard if we look at this alone, right? However, we have those stocks and we have tons of sentiment when we look at the S&P, the NASDAQ, and the Dow saying otherwise. Again, there's a lot less liquidity in the Russell 2000 because people just, I think a lot of people are more concerned with the major indexes, but this kind of shows you two things. To me, he didn't mention this, but this shows that there is a bubble and where that bubble is in the market. It's not necessarily the smaller cap stocks that are, you know, the ones that are showing what everyday consumer, you know, companies are doing. It shows you that there is a massive bubble right now in the NASDAQ, the S&P, the Dow, anything that has any type of exposure to the top 7. That's where we're seeing the bubble because it's absolutely rallying against what seems to be the normal, you know, blue collar, middle class type companies, how they're performing. And with this Russell right here, it hasn't necessarily bounced. It's been range bound. The highest it's gone since it's been hit the bottom is 2030. It's currently 200 points below that. And that's you know, 450 point drop from where it was at the all-time high. I think that this is showing that the market necessarily is not in a great place. We are sitting on a bubble very similar to 2000 in some of those major indexes, and there's a good chance that we could be seeing something of the like where we do see a pullback or some type of pullback to the downside. I don't necessarily know if that's going to happen this year, or it's going to happen next year, but I do think that this is a little bit more of an accurate representation of where the market truly should be trading at. However, it's just not because, well, there's 7 stocks that people are just going AI ballistic over for this entire year, right? I mean, it's a short squeeze, but also at the same time, there's just tons of people that are just piling into these stocks because it's like there's no way they can go down. They're the top 7. Well, something to keep in mind, right? So I think that's really important to keep an eye on with the Russell. Not too much on that front other than that, but I did want to pull up the VIX because today is VIXpiration, and that's an important day as well because that's a lot of options contracts expire today if you're trading the VIX. And I will say this, I did look this morning, 100,000 shares of calls were pulled out just this morning, early Wednesday, on the VIX for January 17th expiry, and I believe the strike price is 26. So someone on Wall Street's betting big on the VIX going up by January 17th. And I think that lines up with the other guy who was going balls deep in it. I forget who it was on Wall Street. I think it was a JP Morgan investor.
Yeah. Someone from JP Morgan.
So someone is definitely teaming up with them, it seems like, on that trade, expecting there to be some type of volatility spike coming soon. And I kind of agree that the VIX is bottoming out down here. I'll show you a few reasons why. Obviously, we still have the weekly close. I think that we saw a massive crush in the VIX over the past 2 weeks, 3 weeks even, if you want to. Yeah, it's 3 weeks that we saw from here where it just dropped, 29% 3 weeks ago. Last week, 4.96%. And then this week, actually, it's not even down that bad this week. It's down 0.56%. Really interesting. But we saw the massive crush, 2-3 weeks ago. But the one chart that we were taking a look at is the VVIX against the VIX, right? That shows us the inverse of the move. Seems like whenever the VVIX starts to find resistance, that's when we start to see the move to the downside. And once it breaks there, the VIX starts to go up. So obviously this entire move down here is when the VIX was starting to rally a good amount. And then now that this is going up and the VIX is going down, we can see that they're inversely correlated, right? But we've kept trading around this level right here, this trend line, keep finding resistance on it. We're currently trading on it. We're overbought on the daily. I do think that we avoided a death cross right here. Again, I keep talking about these death crosses because we're seeing death cross rallies across the board, and even in these these comparative charts where we're looking at two asset classes against each other, we're seeing that there are death cross rallies across the board. We're finding resistance now. The main thing that we want to see when it comes to this is we want to see a really good move to the downside. I mean, I'm talking about like we want to see it fall off a cliff, and that would tell us that volatility is picking up, and that might even give some of those people that pulled out those calls for 26%, 26 handle on the VIX, that they're probably going to be in the money by that time. So it's going to be really interesting to see how this plays out with the VIX expiring today, people pulling out contracts for the following month. It'll be really, really interesting to see how the shorter term traders are going to be playing this volatility move. And this kind of lines up with how TradFi has been on an absolute tear recently. Obviously, we're up. How much are we up this week? A lot, probably. We're up 2.12%, but we can see that we are up a good amount from where we were back in October 30th. So maybe we're getting towards the end of a move. I'm not saying we aren't, but I think that seems like a lot of things are lining up in that regard. So maybe that's why they're pulling out some of those positions, expecting volatility to return.
All right. Yeah, I can't. I mean, VIX is just so low right now, and UVIX is definitely one of those situations where I may want to
Be
throw
careful with
some
that.
more in. Yeah,
that's the only thing I'll say with the
I'm
VVIX,
not gonna go
because
crazy or anything with that.
it's liquidity driven. So if there's not enough liquidity in there, it doesn't matter what the VIX is doing. It just won't go up as much. But if stuff starts going crazy, then, obviously more money is going to flow in. It makes it easier for it to pump higher. That's why you see, if the VIX goes up 10%, you might see like an 18% day if there's a lot of money flowing into it. So that's my only thing that people should worry about. Kind of sucks longing the VIX that way. That's why I think a lot of people do calls or they'll do puts on it and just hope that it hits that level by that point. But I don't know. It does seem fairly oversold on the daily, and I do think that the VIX is going to be bottoming out here or by the beginning of next week.
All right, let's talk crypto. It is alt day, man. Like the alts are driving this right now. We see Avalanche up 22.5% on the day. Solana almost 17% on the day, and at a yearly high of $66. I want to pull up on the daily. When was the last time? Let me do this real quick. But I want to see, when was the last time that that Solana was this high of a price? Let's go all the way back. Jesus. To
before FTX.
Oh yeah. Way before.
It's gotta be
FTX.
like June 2022.
May 11th, 2022 is the last day, and it was going down it went down bigly on that day.
Bigly sound like Donald Trump. We got I'll vote for you, J Webb. We got that was because Terra Luna happened like that, like 3 days after that. So maybe some of the big boys were offloading at that point. That's why I was dumping. But I know
that was a day where it was down like 23%.
Yeah, May. I remember that because I was in Vegas when Terra Luna collapsed, and I tried buying the bottom of that, and I fucking missed it. But that was a quick little $200 gamble. We'll see if we can make 60,000, but it didn't happen. But yeah, this is absolutely insane. How much everything's going up today, and the wild thing is Bitcoin's going up, and not too many people are talking about it. It's almost a 6% push up for Bitcoin today. We had a really good move to the downside yesterday.
That's small fries compared to what's going on over there with Sol and AVAX.
Yeah, those are very, very centralized tokens for the time being, especially with VCs owning a lot of Solana. But I digress. Let's get into Bitcoin, and then we'll get into the alts. This is where we are currently. We're at 37,610. I did say that if we did get a pull down here, we're probably going to get back into this supply zone. It just seems like they want to keep this up here. I'm still very much of the belief that we're probably going to see $39,000 to $40,000 Bitcoin. I think that's going to trap a lot of people. And again, the daily is a really weird place because we're seeing these moves up and down real quick. And don't get me wrong, there's a lot of volatility and there's a lot of $1,000 swings in both directions. The thing is, we're seeing the stochastic RSI move rapidly back and forth because of those, which shows me that there isn't necessarily a ton of strength behind a lot of these moves. So if I'm anticipating the $10,000 move up from here, probably not going to get it looking at the daily chart, right? $2,000-$3,000 move, I think that's in line, but it probably is going to see the stochastic RSI just ping pong back and forth over the shorter time frame. So keep an eye on that. I think that's going to be really telling of where we see this crypto move to the upside or downside coming soon. And we could also see that we're extremely overbought on the weekly, right? I mean, it's at 196 by the end of this week. I mean, I don't think that we're going to be at 196. I think we'll be closer to 199, 100, probably the most overbought that it possibly can be. And look at the volumes, guys. Even the volumes on the push up have been increasing. Like, there's just not enough volumes that are, make logical sense for why this is moving up. So tread lightly with this. I'm also seeing a lot of this Tether, the stuff that I brought up about Tether coming out from Blackrock now. They're saying that stablecoins aren't necessarily good for Bitcoin. And if we really want to see this Bitcoin ETF be approved, Gary Gensler is going to want that under control. So I honestly think that this is still a dangerous market. So obviously tread lightly. I think if you are going to be doing anything on the exchanges, obviously self-custody. But even with Bitcoin's push to the upside, we're still seeing, almost a 1% push up for Bitcoin dominance, which is really surprising given how much everything else is going up today. Solana just have it right here. Look at that Sol chart, man. What the hell? And look, I mean, hold on, let me get Solana on Binance because I want to see how the volumes look on that one. USDT, because of course. All right, that's a little bit better. Yeah, I mean, the volumes are definitely picking up here, right? It seems like there is a lot of money flowing into Sol. However, when Bitcoin did have a massive dump yesterday, I believe Solana was still up. Yeah, Solana had a green day yesterday, regardless of the dump that we saw. Maybe it's because we saw a little bit of a tailing off here, but yeah, we put in a new yearly high for this son of a bitch, and it just seems like they want this price to stay extremely elevated. I'm really interested to see what FTT is actually doing right now because I've been keeping an eye on it. But we saw that it was up 200% the last time. Yeah, it's trailed off significantly, but it's up 12% today. Very funny. It seems like we're expecting FTX 2.0 to be the top exchange in the United States after all this is said and done. I don't think that's going to be the case. If anyone still uses FTX at that point, good luck. But look how overbought it is on the daily, even for how low the price was. That's kind of funny there. And the volumes are coming in. Now they're decreasing, its price going up. That's bearish divergence, guys. Bearish divergence on FTT. AVAX, let's see this son of a. This is the one that you showed me before the show, and I was just like, you got to be kidding me, man. 21% up.
Ew.
Look at
That
that.
is ridiculous.
Best part is look at the stochastic RSI. It's coming towards the over. It was going to be oversold coming out of the overbought. That's saying nope. Take a U-turn, going straight back there by today's close. But yeah, I mean this is a massive pump. We got a lot of resistance up in this area. Obviously at $21. We saw that back in April of 2023. January, beginning of the year, and then also back here in September of last year, right before we saw a massive dump because of inflation. And that was also pre-FTX. So really interesting to see that. But this is the thing that we really need to keep an eye on. And we get to look at this across TradFi as well. And this kind of goes back to what I was saying about the Russell, how certain things are just absolutely inflated and how people's sentiment are just going insane. When you zoom out, it's not that big of a fucking pump. Like it's a good move. Don't get me wrong. But if you're buying up at, $200 a coin or something like that, it's like I guess I made a few pennies today, made some of it back, but that's kind of the mindset you need to have when you're looking at this, because in some ways a lot of this,
that also is just a good reminder. Like, yeah, it's up on the day. I'm not saying to go buy it right now. Okay, that's all I'm saying. But there is a lot of potential to the upside here eventually if you have a long enough time horizon. And so with something like maybe not like Avalanche or Chainlink, which is having another solid day, like, do I wish I had bought more at $6? Yes, but I bought some, and I'm happy with the growth I've had with that part of my portfolio. But that's another one where I think $100, $150 in the next bull market is absolutely a possibility. So I think you just need to be careful we need to be careful here, not getting too bullish or too bearish, like staying level-headed and clear and knowing your objective in this whole thing and kind of knowing how much time you can really put into this and how much energy you want to put into it. Because like for some people, continuing to DCA right now is probably just fine. You know, because we do have a lot of potential higher from here. Like for many of these tokens, I don't know where Bitcoin's going. I'm not one of these people who thinks it's going to $1 million a coin unless something really, really goes bad. In which case, that's going to be a scary situation. But I do think there is plenty of value in those if you have a long enough time horizon, and it can make it very easy to be like, hey, listen, that's just I'm going to slowly accumulate these tokens because I think that there is potential. Like I do like Avalanche, and you know I may add that to my list of things that I begin DCAing. Like you know I'm trying to really I've been thinking about that a lot lately. Is like okay, what do I want to make sure that I go into the next market with? Like, I don't need to have 80 different tokens. I'm fine having like my crypto portfolio being made up of like five different ones, like Bitcoin, ETH, Chainlink, and then what are my other two? And it's probably not going to be Doge, and it's probably not going to be some shit coin, but like maybe Avalanche is that fourth one, you know, and what can I put for the fifth? So it's just that's kind of where my head is at right now in this market is okay. I want to accumulate more assets. I do think we're going to hit another bull market 2025. I don't know about 2024, but trying to do that thought experiment now of like what do I want to have in my portfolio, I think is a really important thing for people to do.
Absolutely. I completely agree with you. I don't think it's a bad time at all to be looking for things that you want to be holding on to. I'm not saying buy right now, but I'm saying do your research right now while because these will retrace. You're not going to just see up only, right? I mean, if I'm just looking at Sol's chart here, we had pretty much the same exact type of rally back here in March of 2022, right? We rallied up insane amount. Let's see what the percentage move was from here. It's roughly, you know, an 83% move up. I mean, should I do the same from where we were at the bottom of this move in October? You know, it's 292. Obviously, it's a really good move, but we're also way lower and there's a lot less liquidity, so obviously it's going to push up a lot higher. But then you had a substantial move down right after it, right? So that's kind of the thing you need to be cautious with right here. You know, that's an 81% move down. Do I think we're going to get something similar to that? I don't know. I think that we are going to pull back, but I do want to see when the dust settles with Solana and a couple of these other ones where the price lays, because I do think that there is tons of upside in the next bull run. Maybe not the amount that we saw in 2021. Maybe we see more because of adoption, right? Maybe the ETF, you know, gets people excited about crypto and they feel like, okay, now it's finally a regulated industry for the most part, and I feel safe investing into this. You know, I reasonably can see Solana in the range of $500 to $1,000 a coin. I'm not going to say that. Ooh, I think you're muted.
I am muted. Back at 60, like it just hit 67 for a second there. That's crazy, man.
It is crazy, man. And
Solana's going to 70 here in the next, I don't know, maybe a couple of hours.
I think it's possible to see it go to 80, to be honest with you. I think that there is still that much of a move. However, I don't feel confident at all getting into a move for 14%. Right here when I know that there's something likely to shift. And again, a lot of it probably relies on Bitcoin in some degree. But yeah, I mean, I honestly think that Solana could hit $500 to $1,000 per coin in the next bull run if things go right. I think that's a conservative estimate. I think it's a good estimate. You've seen it go up all the way to what, 270, 280 almost. And, you know, double that with a lot more adoption. And it shot up that much in a short period of time too, right? Wait till a lot more money comes in. The only thing is you might not have the exchanges balance to help you out this time around. So that might have to be a lot more retail or institutional based. But I digress from that. I think that crypto right now is a ticking time bomb. I remain extremely bullish on that idea. If you look at the total market cap, you know, obviously the daily, it's getting close to oversold. And again, a lot of that comes from these moves if there's a lot of strength behind them. But if we look at this, this is still putting in 100% a bear flag. Eventually, this is going to break. And guys, once I said it earlier, I will say it every time. We averted a death cross within this range. It rallied right through it, right? And we see these things all the time. I'm going to pull up one right real quick on the S&P that I noticed back in 2008, and it's very similar to what we're seeing right here, right? We were going for a death cross because we were closing below it on the weekly and on the daily. Actually, I should be looking at the daily one. Yeah, I mean, we got super close to a death cross and we rallied right out of it on the S&P on the daily. And if we look all the way back to 2008, we could see that, you know, we were about to get a death cross right here in September 2007. It rallied And then eventually we did get the death cross just a few months later. So that's kind of the thing that we need to have perspective on. I don't necessarily get carried away because I do know that death cross rallies can be violent and they can, be something that we aren't necessarily anticipating, and that could definitely hurt a lot of people. And people that are going short have to cover, which initially, just naturally drives the price up because now the exchanges are buying back the tokens because you're covering your positions. So it's just something really interesting to see. I think that a lot of these death cross rallies eventually will fade, and we will see those death crosses. It's just right now we have to monitor the markets and see how things play out here, right? We know that OPEX is tomorrow for TradFi. It's going to be really interesting to see how they close come Friday. I don't know how they're closed tomorrow. I'm not going to try and bet against that or in any way, but we've had some really good days. We built a lot of gaps to the downside. We've cleared another gap today on the S&P. This one we can delete up here. We only got one north of here at about 45.65. If that gets filled, then everything is below us in terms of these gaps. And then we probably have to go below the 250, which would cause a death cross eventually on the daily because these gaps are all the way down here to 41.90. It doesn't have to go in one fall swoop, but there's a good chance that we could eventually end up back below these levels again. I'm just not gonna get too excited on that idea until we get some validation. Last thing we'll say, Michael Burry closed the shorts on the QQQ and the SPY. A lot of people are saying that he put in a loss. Probably didn't. If he opened up in July and he closed in late September, dude did pretty well for himself. So I think people just love to bag on Michael Burry, just like they're saying it was a $1.6 billion short. It wasn't. The biggest, that's just the most idiotic thing in the world. Who's it, Gergoven, that guy on Twitter? I was so happy when
that guy is just such a clown. Like, just always tweets in all caps. And I've listened to him on Spaces. He just I don't know, man. I don't know if it's like a cultural thing or what, but the guy he doesn't know how to behave.
He's got bad boy. It just seems like it just seems like people like to shit on Michael Burry, but then they champion Kathy Wood and stuff like that. I'm just like, you guys have no idea what you're talking about. But he opened up short on semiconductors. What does that mean? It means he probably expects NVIDIA to go down, right? Probably expects NVIDIA and ARM or any of those probably to go down. I'm not saying they will. They have to, because they faked us out on that head and shoulders pattern. Now, that's a wild pattern. Did you see that chart for NVIDIA, man? I've been focused so much on that major indexes because I'm looking for the next move.
I don't need you to ruin my day
this ruined my day, bro. Look at this. Look how much it rallied from this head and shoulders. I had to delete it off my chart. Do you think I wanted to delete that off my chart? No, not at all. But this was part of the thread I put out last night about the S&P, how we're seeing the tech stocks rally against the other stocks. Obviously, all-time high still for guys like this, but then you look at shithead American Airlines put in the dick rally here. That's nothing compared to what NVIDIA's done. NVIDIA's put in the highest close it's done. So good for NVIDIA. People were holding that, but I think Michael Burry is looking at NVIDIA at this time. And I also think ARM and a couple of others, semiconductor, some of those tech companies like that he's anticipating some downward price movement. I think this gap is what's, getting him very excited about that short, but that's 50% of his portfolio, about 47%, I think was the exact number. But it's really interesting to see that. I mean, he's been profitable so far this year, I think, off that major short. Now it's time to see if this one plays out. And again, I said NVIDIA and Apple were the two that could take this market down. If NVIDIA starts to go, maybe we start to see some of those tech companies go. But again, we're going to have to give it some time, probably see more movement in the markets after OPEX.
All right. One final thing I just noticed.
Yeah.
I pulled up Fed funds futures probability, and
I saw
the market is priced out. Like, there's no longer expected to be a rate hike. The market completely priced that out for December. It's the current anticipation is skip in December, no rate hike in January, and now they're starting to price in a potential rate cut beginning in March. And it looks like the current odds-on favorite is rate cuts begin in May.
That's what I saw. Yeah,
data I'm reading here, and that we continue. So the expectation by end of year next year is, in the range of 4% to 5% for the Fed funds rate, and it's looking more to be in like the 4.25 is where the markets are pricing right now, which is pretty interesting to see.
Unemployment is going to be the key for that, right? If unemployment continues to rise, or unemployment revisions, if those continue to rise, then that gives you an idea of whether we're going to enter that recession. But I think greed is a really bad thing. And I think greed can go both ways. And seeing people be extremely optimistic and greedy for something that seems like we should be, treading lightly, cautiously, is not necessarily a good thing to see. And I think the markets are gonna catch them out on that if they continue to be extremely optimistic off of one data point that's probably gonna be revised in a month.
Yeah, it's been a great year in the markets, and that's awesome.
Don't go chasing waterfalls, guys.
That's for damn sure. After how bad last year was, the odds were never going to be that it was going to be a repeat of that, right? Like there was always going to be, and we've almost recovered all of last year's losses, which is pretty wild if I'm looking at like some of the TradFi stuff. But
not in the Russell.
Yeah, that's true. All right, that's going to wrap it up for today. We'll be back tomorrow at our regular time, going through the latest news, data, anything else that is impacting the markets. We appreciate you all for being here with us today. If you have not yet, hit that like button down below. Make sure to subscribe to the channel. Drop us a comment. Share us out on social media. All of those things help us out a ton. So thank you for being here today, Chris, Mr. House, Randy. Appreciate you guys as always. Have an awesome rest of your day, and we will see you tomorrow.
Take care, everyone.